Hey folks, this is Kalani. As we get closer and closer to patch 8.3, we're getting a better picture of what everything is going to look like and how the different systems are going to work. The content that we're currently playing through is also going to transition into the outdated category, but not before it gets a few rounds of nerfs. We have one of those rounds coming this week, and there's a few new buffs being talked about on the PTR, and also one key system has changed quite considerably. Let's dive right in. Let's start with the large nerfs coming to the Eternal Palace, because these should actually be live by the time you're watching this video. Or, well, they will be for North American servers at any rate. This week's reset will apply several nerfs to a variety of bosses in the Eternal Palace raid, and it's actually mostly for Mythic difficulty. So if you were stuck on one boss in particular on Mythic this week, you might be able to finally push through and down that pesky son of a Naga witch. The first boss on the chopping block is Augur Zoa, and the boss's health has been reduced by 5% on Mythic difficulty. That should make it much easier to meet the damage checks in the first phase, and a percentage nerf to a boss's health is just going to make the entire fight faster to get through and easier to accomplish. Your healers don't have to make their mana last so long, your DPS don't have to push every inch of damage out of their rotation, it loosens the restrictions and makes a kill so much easier. 5% might not sound like a lot, but I bet that one nerf will open up the floodgates for a lot of guilds who are currently stuck on this boss. That's not all though. The Zoatroids and all of the Naga ads have also had their health reduced by 5%, which should help everyone who have just been out of reach of a kill on this boss. The Queen's Court encounter is receiving the same kind of nerf. Both bosses will have 5% chunked off of their current maximum health to make the fight a little bit faster on Mythic difficulty. This one is a bit of a marathon right now, what with 2 bosses health pools you need to get down, and the number of abilities you have to dodge, dip, duck, dive and dodge is pretty scary, so the less time you spend in this encounter, the happier everyone is going to be. And the last nerf we have on the table right now is for Queen Azshara herself. This is a bit of a weird one. Powering up an Ancient Ward or draining Azshara's Ward of Power now reduces the maximum health of the caster by 8% per stack on all difficulties, down from 10%. This might seem like a small change, but it's actually huge for anyone running into problems with not being able to soak the blues or power up the yellow runes enough. Right now, most people are saying to soak to 4 stacks, which would be 40% less max health overall for your players. That's a pretty safe level and ensures you won't get one shot from any random damage in the fight. It's important that you soak as much as you can, but still stay alive. 40% less health is a bit of a sweet spot here, but with this change, that 40% health mark is now 5 stacks up from 4. That's 1 additional stack every time someone soaks. If you're playing with 20 players, that's 20 stacks across your raid, minus the 2 for tanks, I guess. And that's not just once per encounter either. That's every time someone soaks. You can soak once about every 2 minutes, and the fight typically lasts long enough for players to get at least 3 soaks in each. It might not seem quite as impactful as a straight 5% health nerf, but it should give you a lot more leeway when dealing with the various runes you have to power up or deplete. This change is also for every difficulty, so if you've been struggling to get Queen Azshara on Normal for the Meta achievement, Heroic for Ahead of the Curve achievements, or Mythic for the Cutting Edge achievement, this nerf should help you out almost no matter who you are. Hopefully with some of these nerfs in place, you can progress a bit further into the Eternal Palace raid before it gets replaced in patch 8.3. There are a few other balance changes that I wanted to talk about, but we'll have to wait a little bit longer for these ones to show their face. The latest PTR build is testing some significant buffs for Mistweaver monks and a buff to one of the least used essences over the past raid tier. Let's talk about the essence first because that's relevant to everyone. Sorry Mistweavers, sit tight and we'll be right with you. The World Vein Resonance essence used to be a decent pickup, but then everyone got the better essences and it kinda got left behind. I still remember in the first week or 2 of the Eternal Palace, all of the melee were begging each other to run with the World Vein Resonance to make sure they all got the maximum benefit from the minor power. I don't think the major power was ever really taken, but that might change with this buff. Previously, the major power gave you a 50% bonus to the primary stat gain from the essence for 10 seconds. You can see why no one really bothered with it. On the PTR, they're testing a 300% increase for 18 seconds on the major power. which, you know, that's a very sizable buff. That's kind of in the ballpark of, why was this major power so bad to begin with, size of a buff? When something gets a buff this big, you know it was terrible before. You'll get 6 times the bonus to your primary stat with the on use, and it lasts for nearly twice as long. I wonder whether this is going to bring the essence up to a decent level when compared to some of the major players in the game right now. The condensed life essence keeps getting nerfed, so that one might end up at the back of the list, but with a buff this large, surely the World Vein essence is up there somewhere. If this still is enough to get players to run the major essence, it's kind of hilarious that we had such a bad major effect in the game for so long. I can't wait to see how testing this buff goes. Just by looking at the numbers, it has to make this essence at least worth considering in patch 8.3 for a lot of players. I wonder if that's an effort to change up essences in general and make sure we're using a few different ones, or just the dev team trying to keep island expeditions somewhat relevant as the expansion nears the end. Alright, let's move on to the Mistweavers. Sorry to keep you waiting. It looks like the wait might be worthwhile though. I can't remember the last time I saw so many buffs for a single class. Life Cocoon is going to scale differently. It will now be 60% of the caster's max health instead of based upon spell power. That should ensure it will always provide a sizable shield for whoever you cast it on, and the more gear and higher item level you get, the stronger your chi bubble is going to be. Enveloping Mist healing will be increased by 10%, a nice little buff there for one of the heal over time effects in the Mistweaver's arsenal. The bane of all other healers' cooldowns, Revival, will be getting a bump up as well, 12% increased healing in patch 8.3, just to make sure you can snipe every little morsel of healing from that tranking druid. Renewing Mist healing will be increased by 15% as well, and it will cost a little less mana to actually cast. Spam more Mist on your allies and it's going to heal for quite a bit more. If that doesn't make you happy as a Mistweaver, I'm not sure what will. And then Vivify's healing will also be increased by 6%, just to help top everyone off easier. That's a nice round of buffs no matter how you look at things. There may still be flaws and holes in the Mistweaver's kit in general, but for what they have right now, these buffs should be quite significant. You should see a decent increase in patch 8.3, assuming these buffs don't change by then, which is definitely always nice. These buffs might not do enough to really upset the healer metagame in Raiding and Mythic Plus, but honestly that only really matters if you're progressing on the cutting edge. I get frustrated when people apply the meta that the top guilds are using to everyone else and ignore the classes and specs that aren't being played right now at the tippy top of progression. Our guild used to have a handful of Mistweavers and a couple more being played as alts. I don't think a single one is left. People either swapped off to other healers like Holy Paladins or just stopped playing their monks. It's a little disappointing, but maybe these buffs will help encourage some more Mistweaver madness. Either way, if you love playing your Mistweaver, these buffs should be welcome news. Now before we pop off, I wanted to touch on something kind of interesting that happened on the 8.3 public test realm. I've been covering the changes on the PTR for a while now, and we've gone through quite a few iterations of the assaults, horrific visions, currencies, exchange rates, all that jazz. We went from coalescing visions being an item to a currency. Vessels of horrific visions used to drop as items themselves, but now the only way to get them is to exchange coalescing visions with Rathian. That used to be at a rate of 1,000 visions for a vessel. If you haven't been keeping up with the PTR, you need a vessel of horrific visions to open the horrific vision of Ogrimmar or Stormwind. Those horrific visions are going to be the most important part of patch 8.3 for progressing your character, and especially the legendary cloak. In the latest PTR build, the dev team increased the cost of a vessel of horrific visions from 1,000 coalescing visions to 10,000 coalescing visions. So that's kind of the bad news. The good news is that a lot of sources for this currency were also bumped up to compensate. They cost 10 times more, but if we get 10 times more from most places, it all evens out, right? Well, that's not really the case. A good example of getting less bang for your buck with this change is daily quests. Previously, they would reward anywhere from 8 to 15, I think it was. It was a pretty wide spread. Now they reward 50 each. Not quite the 10 times increase we were looking for, but that does mean that daily quests will be less impactful on your horrific visions progress. That's sort of helpful if you don't want to do daily quests, but also not really helpful if you want to progress as much as possible. You're going to be hunting down every source of coalescing visions you can get your hands on if you want to upgrade your cloak as fast as possible. That means those daily quests are probably getting done no matter what. So not only are they going to be another chore to add to your list, but they're also going to be less valuable when compared to before. Another source of visions that isn't going to be as worthwhile is straight up grinding mobs. Previously you could get 200 to 300 coalescing visions in about a half hour of farming the minor visions of N'Zoth. They did make a few changes to how those visions work to make it harder to stay in for longer periods of time, but with the new coalescing visions change I don't think it will be worth it anymore. The visions drop rate doesn't seem to have changed too much, and it certainly hasn't been increased by 10 times. The same thing has happened to the chests out in the new zones. They used to reward 5 or so, now they reward about 15. So daily quests, farming chests and grinding mobs will give you less visions than before when compared to how many you need to purchase a vessel to open a horrific vision. It's not all bad news though. The daily quest tied to the minor visions has been increased quite a bit. Before these changes, the first daily each week would give you 200 visions, and now that gives you 2000. That's right in line with a 10 times increase, and after that first one you complete each week, that daily would reward values similar to ordinary daily quests. I think it was usually around 15 visions. Certainly not quite as worthwhile as the once per week 200, but now every daily quest after the first actually rewards 1000 visions. That could make up for the reduction on everything else, and it's all in one place. It's also a new type of content that should be more interesting than dailies or grinding, so even though they're reducing the number of visions available from a couple of sources, it actually might work out better in the end. But that's actually not even the largest increase here. The Black Empire assaults have been giving the exact amount you need to get one vessel of horrific visions this entire time. That hasn't changed, so the Black Empire assaults will now give you 10,000 coalescing visions when you complete them, but the other assaults, the faction assaults in the other zones, they used to give you 200 coalescing visions. 2,000 would have been a decent match there, but they went all the way up to 5,500. That is a massive increase, and could be the difference between getting in just 2 visions per week easily, or being able to do 3 visions per week fairly easily. Another vision per week is another upgrade on your cloak. That's huge. Just from assaults you should be able to get 10k from the Black Empire and then 16,500 from the non-Black Empire assaults each week, assuming that we'll still have access to 3 in total every week. You just need to pick up an extra 3,500 to get another vessel, which should be super easy with the changes to the daily minor vision quest. So all in all, it should be less worth it to grind your face against a wall farming chests and mobs, and you can stay up to date just by finishing off the minor vision daily quests and assaults. That should help anyone with limited time to play, and it could discourage the endless grinds that we've seen in the past if it's going to take too long to get that 4th vessel in any given week. I'm pretty excited for these changes. I haven't been a big fan of daily quests recently, and I'm not really interested in another chest hunt. So I'll probably be happy just finishing off the assaults and the minor visions for the most part. If that's all it takes to keep the cloak up to date, I might even consider picking up an alt character in 8.3. Imagine that. But that's all I wanted to talk about today. What do you think about the nerfs to the Eternal Palace? Are there any other bosses that you think need to get hit with that nerf bat, or are you pretty happy with how the raid tier has gone so far? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.